Hey guys, welcome to the workshop. Come on into the room. We're not going to start for a couple more minutes here. We need some time for everybody to come into the room. But while you're waiting, please say hi. Tell us where you're from. It's always super fun to see where people are from. I think the record for the furthest away person we've had on one of these so far was Croatia, which is awesome. Oh my gosh, like what a world we live in that we can just sit here and talk about hiking fitness, and I can be in Denver and you can be in Croatia. It's pretty rad. So let me just check and see. 5 attendees, it looks like. Yeah, we probably have some more people coming in over the next few minutes, so come on in. I'm hanging out here with Cindy. She is also going to help me. You'll see her in the chat. She will also talk to you, help me answer your questions. Can you guys hear me? Can someone jump in the chat and say, Sarah, we can hear you? Hang on one second. Let me just... And I'm going to put up one other thing for you. We also have, because this webinar is a little bit involved, it's got a lot of steps and details, and your brain's probably going to melt down if you try to take notes. So I actually created a workbook for you that you can download, and I'm going to give that to you right at the beginning of the webinar. So if you look above the chats, there's 3 tabs. They say chat, poll, and handouts. Go to the handouts, and you should see a link where you can download, or a button where you can download the workbook. And I think it's like 1 meg. I'm sorry, it's not like a tiny file. I put pretty pictures on it. But go ahead and do that. Cynthia says, I can hear you. Oh, thank you, Cynthia. Welcome to the workshop. It's awesome. I'm also sitting here with a Cynthia who's helping me moderate. So she's a Cynthia. You're Cynthia, right? Yeah. She's right behind me here. Yeah, so thank you guys for tuning in. I know this is not always the greatest time for people. Some of you are probably coming right out of work. You're a little bit tired, so it's an amazing name. Yes, it is. Yeah, so if you're feeling a little tired, feel free to grab some wine, some kombucha, drink a beer, whatever relaxes you. The workbook, you don't have to take a whole lot of notes tonight. So yeah, we're just going to have fun, talk about hiking fitness, and, have a good time and hopefully learn a lot. So let me check the time, 5:29. We'll give it 1 more minute here. Gary, oh, look, Gary from Nebraska. Oh my gosh. Hello, Gary, welcome. Waving at you from over the border here. We can Denver's right against the mountains, so we can look over the plains and see Nebraska. And the joke is that people who live in the eastern part of Denver live in western Nebraska. So yeah, I have a friend that lives out there. We joke we're going to Nebraska when we're going to her house, but Nebraska's a great place. I've driven across it a few times, so let's see, what's our time? And it's 5:30, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and just open my slides. Give me 1 second here. My phone's acting up just a hair. Let's see. Okay, guys, so what we'll do, let me just check everything one time. Okay, I think we're good to go. So I'm actually going to shut off my video. What else do we have? Alaska? Oh my gosh. Patty said, my internet is horrible, so I may not make it all the way through this. So Patty, it's okay. If you're having a hard time, we're gonna send out a link to the replay. So if it's just unwatchable, maybe just jump off, and within an hour, we'll have a link out to you. And the new webinar platform we have, the links don't really expire, so you can kind of watch it at your leisure. So internet is fine in Alaska. Oh, I think I know you, Liz. Are you in the Facebook group? Okay, well, cool. I am going to get started here. I'm gonna shut my camera and let's jump in. So over the next 60 minutes, I'm gonna show you how to write a hiking, backpacking, or mountaineering training plan that gets results, how to diagnose what's working and what isn't, how to find what's stopping you from growing to the next level. Plus, I'll share a simple workbook that will show you step-by-step how to plan the perfect training season. Are you ready? Here we go. What do I click? I only use this once a month. It's so funny. I forget how it works. Okay, so we are at a webinar on adventure sports training plans, and I'm kind of dying to know what hikes you all want to do. Like, what inspired you to jump on this webinar? So go ahead and jump in the chat box and let us know your goal or your goals if you have a couple. And while you're doing that, I just want to make sure, because we're going to cover a ton of things tonight, that you're in the right place. So you're in the right place if you're ready to learn a simple formula to create hiking training plans that get results. If you want to boost your chances of reaching your summit or finishing your hike and enjoying it, and if you want an epic endurance system in place so you can boost your hiking stamina anytime you want to. Ooh, Cindy is climbing Capitol Peak. Jillian is doing PCT. Oh my gosh, I'm so jealous, ladies. That sounds fantastic. And just a couple reminders before we start. As Patty is finding out, these webinars take a ton of bandwidth. So you really need to make sure that there's everything else that's on the internet in your house is off. Make sure your smart TV is off. Even on your own computer, if you have other tabs open in your browser, that's actually a good reminder for me. I'm going to close some of mine. Just make sure that any other programs that use internet, your internet backup is off. So we have a ton to cover, and I really don't want you to miss a thing. And then, if anything looks strange, you lose sound, or your screen freezes, the first thing to do, just go ahead and refresh your browser. That will fix the problem 99% of the time. And also if for any reason I should disappear, just sit tight. We've actually had experiences where I had to go out of the room and come back on. It almost always works, so don't go anywhere, just sit tight. And then, because we're talking about health and fitness today, I'll share my standard disclaimer with you. I'm a personal trainer, not a doctor, so nothing I say should be taken as medical advice. If you have a chronic condition, risk factors for cardiovascular disease, or unknown risk for cardiovascular disease, please consult your doctor before beginning an exercise program, or if you're going to ramp your program way up, that's also a good time to do it. So that's all the boring legal crap, so it's out of the way, and let's dive in. So during this masterclass, you'll learn the exact 6-step process I use to create training plans for myself and for my clients. And this is the same framework I teach on my blog and also in my courses. And if you stay till the end, I have some extra special things for you. You'll get a party pack of resources to download, including my Home Strength Workouts ebook, my Intro to Intervals ebook, and my Epic Endurance Roadmap, which shows you which workouts to do at each fitness level. And since we're studying training plan creation today, I'll also send you a couple of plans to look at. You'll get a 4-week walk to hike plan, a 4-week Mount Rainier Kickstarter plan. Studying these plans is a great way to see how I put all the elements together and how you can too. So we'll send out the download link via the chat to everyone who stays to the end. So make sure you stick around. So let's see. Oh my gosh, Patty is trying to climb the highest 100 mountains in Washington State. Oh my goodness. Oh, can I come with you? That sounds amazing. Gary is section hike of the CT. Is that the Colorado Trail? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Liz had surgery, needs to start slow, backpack in August and September. Oh my gosh, Liz, I have someone I need you to meet. I have a friend who just did the Chilkoot Pass, and he thought it was amazing. It is, yeah, it's got a couple hard days there though. And then backpacking through Colorado, Shelby. Oh, it's going to be so much fun. You guys are a fun group. I'm jealous already. So to get this party started, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine. We'll call her Becky. Becky lives in, let's say she lives in Nebraska, and she loves hiking every weekend with her friends. So when Becky was in college, she studied abroad in Peru. And while she was there, she started a high altitude trek, but she had to cut the trip short when she really struggled with fitness and altitude sickness. So she has always wanted to go back and try that trek again, but it'll require hiking up to 15 miles a day and crossing passes that are over 15,000 feet high. So Becky here, she has a few options. Let's say she decides to hike more and go on harder hikes, but she doesn't really take the time to learn about endurance training or to make herself a training plan. Becky, she is hiking her ass off, but she is not seeing the results she hoped for. She's spending so much time training that she's losing time with her friends and her partner. She's also spending a ton of money in pursuit of a quick fix. She's tried CrossFit, bar class, training for the new alpinism book, and she even hired a personal trainer, but nothing is working. At this point, Becky is tired and frustrated. She is supposed to go to California this summer and climb Mount Shasta, and she's worried she won't be able to summit or even keep up with the group. And at this point, her dream of trekking in Peru seems totally out of reach. So she wonders if at the age of 35, she's over the hill and her mountain trekking days are over. Yes, it is a challenge, Liz says. Or, option B, she could be training ninja Becky. So this Becky, she learned about endurance training and how to do it right. She knows how to get the most out of every workout so she can actually spend fewer hours training. And she has time to go to festivals and weekend getaways with her partner, who isn't really much of a hiker. And she knows which resources are worth investing money in and which ones she can skip. Becky can't wait to climb Mount Shasta with her friends this year, and she usually says yes to new adventures. In fact, she's already planning to go back to Peru for her revenge trip this fall. So I want to ask you a question. Which would you rather be? Go on and let me know in the comments. Who would you rather be? Would you rather be no plan Becky, who's working her ass off and getting no results? Or do you want to be training ninja She almost called her training ninja bitchy. Oh my goodness. It's been a long day, guys. Training ninja Becky. So go ahead and let us know it looks like Liz wants to be a B. Maybe there are a few of you. Now, it takes a minute for me to see your responses after you type them in, but I'm going to look at my crystal ball and guess most of us are going to be B. Maybe there's a few of you nonconformists who like to work your asses off for no results, but I'm guessing most of you want to be training ninjas so you can actually train less and still get the job done. So, look, Gary says, I'm an A, but would like to be a B. Oh, Gary, you're in the right place. Patty wants to be training ninja Becky. Yes. Cindy wants to be a ninja. Yes, yes, yes. So looks like we all want to be ninjas, want to know how to make it happen. Let's talk about it. So the number one way I got in shape for big hikes and climbs was by showing up every day and working hard. But it really wasn't the exercise itself that made the biggest impact. It was the system I created to get the most out of every workout that really mattered most. So quickly about me. Oh no, what happened? Okay, there we go. So just a super quick intro to me and why I'm teaching this workshop today. My name is Sarah. I'm a fitness coach and certified personal trainer who helps outdoor athletes get in shape for mountaineering, backpacking, and ultra endurance events. You can see a few rando facts about me here. I'm actually drinking sriracha while we talk. It's how I have so much energy. No, not really. Cindy's like, no, you're not. A couple of pics. Here's me on Pequeño Alpamayo in Bolivia, which I think is 17,300 feet tall, one of my favorite climbs. And this year, I hiked across the Grand Canyon from rim to rim to rim without stopping. So that equals about 555 floors. So that's 555 floors, which equals about 11,000 feet of elevation gain. And here's the crazy thing. I did this, for Gary out there in Nebraska, I'm thinking of you. I actually did this with someone from Dallas, Texas, who was not used to hiking hills at all. He did really great. Like he was like less tired than me at the end. So that's great news for all of you who are living and training in the flatlands. Let's see. And I used my endurance training expertise to climb big peaks and finish ultra endurance hikes all in a real size body. So I'm not one of those people who is super ripped and 6% body fat and is always posting selfies of their butt. But I can still do all the things, and so can you. But it wasn't always like this. In 2017, I was taking a mountaineering class. I was training my ass off for the graduation climb at Mount Rainier, but I was totally getting my ass kicked. I'd spent most of 2016 recovering from a potentially disabling injury, so I was coming into class pretty weak, and I was also in a group of really strong hikers and climbers, and I struggled to keep up with them. And this group would leave me behind on training hikes, which was scary and honestly also felt like shit. So I was crushed. I felt like I was the wrong age and the wrong body, and the other girls in my class were like size zeros. Like I said, I've always been a bit more curvy, so I felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. So welcome to my rock bottom. I was really following my training. So I decided I needed, some serious help with my training. And I started following a plan out of my favorite fitness book that was to help people climb Mount Rainier. And that would have been fine, except the plan was apparently written for 25-year-olds with amazing joints and breathlessly short recovery times. And the plan told me to carry a 50-pound pack up 4,000 feet of elevation gain every weekend for months on end. And after a few months, my hips were so sore, I felt like my legs were just going to snap off. But because the plan said so, I soldiered on. And seriously, I probably would have followed the plan into the grave because it was written by an quote unquote expert who knew all the things, right? And meanwhile, I was working brutally hard, getting no results, and actually worse than no results. I was so tired, I was actually slowing down. So it was not a good time. And so if you can relate to any of what I'm saying, give me a hell yeah in the comments. We all kind of go through these things. So if this is why you're here, and believe me when I say I was exactly where you are right now too, and I know just how it feels, and I know that it can be fixed. So, yep, I got a couple of hell yeahs there. Shelby, Gary, Cindy, oh my gosh, Liz, I tend to overdo. Patty, oh yeah. So I promise you all, this can be fixed. So you guys are in the right place. And I would love to say the process of fixing this trouble with my fitness happened overnight, but it didn't. It took over a year. By July, I was fit enough to climb Mount Rainier, but I was very overtrained, and I really didn't enjoy that climb the way I would have liked to. I got to the top, but it really wasn't pretty. But things started to turn around for me later that summer when I started my personal trainer course. And like a lot of trainers, I got into training to train myself, but I did also want to help people avoid going through all of this really painful trial and error that I had been through. So these days, things are very different. A couple more recent pictures. And now life is very different. It's easy to plan the right training for my next adventure. I always feel excited to get out and try new things. I never worry about getting left behind. I almost never hate on my body. So let's get all of you there too. So this is the part where the wrap breaks down. We're going to look at a simple 6-step process for writing an endurance training plan. Now, I'm going to share this webinar. If you've been to my other workshops, this one especially has a ton of information. And I don't want you to be overwhelmed or have a meltdown taking notes. So to help you out, I'm going to share my training plan workbook with you right now. It's already up in the handouts tab. If you look above chat, see above the chat box, you should see where it says chat, polls, and handouts. Go to handouts, go ahead and download that workbook. You'll see a button where you can download it, and just, you don't have to open it or anything, but just hold tight. And I promise you, like, all the good stuff is in there. You'll be able to go back afterwards and just go through this step-by-step process I'm about to share with you. So the workbook covers everything we're about to discuss. It's got some handy worksheets and planning tools. So, just sit back for now and sip your kombucha, sip your wine, soak it all in, and you can totally go back to the workbook and review later everything we're about to learn. So Jillian says, I don't see where to go to download it. So I'm hoping you guys see the same thing I see. If you look up above the chat box, it should say chat, polls, and handouts. Do you guys see that? Upper right with handouts. Okay. Yeah, okay. So Cindy's going to help you figure this out so I can keep on going here. And Jillian, it's also going to be in your party pack at the end. So if for some reason, for all of you, if you can't download it here, we'll make sure that you get it at the end. So let's dive into step one here. And step number one is to know where you're going. So a common mistake people make when they're getting ready for a goal hike is not getting super specific about what kind of fitness the hike will require. I myself, I'm totally guilty of this. Back in 2009, I was training for Kilimanjaro. I was living in Bangkok at the time, so my best training option was to climb the stairs in my 18-story building, which was honestly a very boring and miserable experience. But the really sad thing was I was putting in all this hard work, but I had no idea if it would be enough. I didn't know how long I would be hiking each day on Kilimanjaro or how many feet of elevation I would be gaining. I had actually paid a lot of money to go on the Kilimanjaro tour, and I honestly had no idea if I was training enough, and for all I knew, I might be training too much. So training without knowing the requirements of your goal trip is kind of like going off into the wilderness without a map and just hoping you wind up on top of the mountain. It might not happen. And I don't want you to make this mistake. So let's talk about how to research your goal hike so you know exactly where you're going and how much training you need to be doing. We're going to get some numbers here. So important things to know. If you haven't already, I want you to investigate 3 aspects of your goal hike or trip. Here are the 3 things I want you to look at. So first is distance. How far will you need to hike on each day of the trip? And if you're on a multi-day trip, pay special attention to the longest day and also try to pinpoint the 2 hardest back-to-back days. Second, if you will be hiking in the mountains, you need to know the elevation gain for each day. Again, if your trip lasts more than 1 day, be sure to find the hardest day and also the 2 hardest back-to-back days. Third, find out how much weight you will need to carry on your trip. If your goal hike is a summer day hike, you probably don't need to carry more than 15 pounds in your backpack. But if you're going to do an expedition-style mountaineering trip or something like the Colorado Trail, you might need to carry like 40, 50 pounds of gear up to, with you. If you're on a mountaineering trip, you might have to take a heavy pack to base camp and then a lighter pack to the summit. So again, try to map out how much you're going to be carrying each day of the trip. And in your workbook, you'll find a worksheet that you can print out that can help you organize this info. And so how do you find this info? If your trip is popular, you can probably find the information online or in a guidebook. If you're on a guided trip, your guide service also might be able to answer the questions for you. If you really can't find the answers anywhere, consider hopping in a Facebook group or a forum to see if you can find some people who have done your trip and you can pick their brain. And I've also included some links to some useful websites that I've used for research in your workbook. So definitely check that out. And here's one thing I want you to remember. If you're pulling up these numbers and the distance and elevation gain that you see seem enormous and scary, don't freak out. If your goal hike, for example, has 7,000 feet of elevation gain and you live in Nebraska, don't worry thinking you have to do 7,000 feet on the Stairmaster in 1 day in order to get ready. You don't have to hit these exact numbers during training. You just have to maybe even get in the ballpark. So for example, if you think about a marathoner, they don't actually run 26 miles before the race unless they're really competitive. A lot of times they'll run 18 miles and they'll do just fine. And in fact, running 18 miles is a lot less wear and tear on their bodies. So it's good sometimes to keep your mileage and elevation gain a little bit low until the main event. So to illustrate everything I teach you today, I'm going to build a training plan for Becky. Becky did her research and she found out that her high altitude Peru trek will require her to hike 16 to 24 kilometers per day. So yes, if your trek is outside the USA, expect to find your numbers in metric. So that's about 10 to 15 miles a day, and with 15 miles being her longest day. And Becky couldn't find exact numbers on elevation gain for every day, but she does learn that the biggest day, which goes over kind of a famous pass, will have 1,500 meters of elevation gain, which is about 5,000 feet. So that's a pretty big day, especially at high altitude. It's kind of like going over the Chilkoot Pass in Alaska. But, at least now she knows what she's up against. And Becky also knows, because she's attempted this trek before, that it's supported. So the guides use llama to carry the gear, and she'll only need to carry her day pack and survival essentials, which will be about 15 pounds. Oh, good. It looks like some of you found the handout. So thank you. Thank you, Cindy, for showing them. Okay, so let's move on to step number 2, know where you're at. So knowing where you're at is important before you dive into training. And before you get started, it's really important to note your current fitness level. So many people make the mistake of finding a training plan in a book or online, and then they start at week 1 of the training plan and they try to do everything perfectly all the way through. Now, if this training plan happens to start at your exact starting point with your fitness, this can sometimes kind of work out, but more often what happens is people try to dive into a plan that's too hard for them. They end up discouraged, overtrained, which is worse than being undertrained. They can even injure themselves, which sure doesn't help you reach your goal. So it's also important to start a plan. It's also possible to start a plan that's too easy for you, which will slow you down and waste your time. So let's look at how you can assess your fitness so you know the perfect starting place for the training plan you're going to write for yourself. So there's lots of fancy fitness assessments you could do to check your biometrics. And some of these are really helpful when you're trying to design specific workouts for yourself. But for the purpose of writing your training plan and getting started, we just want a snapshot of your exercise habits. So what I want you to do is to log, if you don't normally do this, is to log all of your exercise for at least 1 week. If you have time, logging it for 2 is even better. You can do this on paper by making yourself a training log, or you can do it in Excel. In your workbook, I've actually included a link to an Excel training log template that does all the math for you. And you can also use a fitness app. My favorite one is Strava. There are many. And as you start logging, you might wonder what exactly constitutes a workout. So for our purposes, to answer this question, we're going to think about a 1 to 10 effort scale, where 1 represents rest and 10 represents working as hard as you possibly can. So by the way, that scale is called Ratings of Perceived Exertion, or RPE. Remember it because you're going to see it again. So for the purposes of this assessment, I just want you to log any activity that feels like RPE 3 or above. So if you take a brisk walk with your dog or ride bikes with the kids and your heart starts pumping a little, feel free to record that. And then also just log all your cardio, strength, and hiking workouts you do throughout the week. And you'll also note the total minutes of exercise, total miles for your hikes, and if you do any walks or runs, and then your total elevation gain for the same. And last thing I want you to do, I want you to grade each workout on an A to F scale, kind of like being back in school. So A means it felt easy, you could do like so much more. F means it felt so hard you didn't finish it, and then there's everything in between. And then at the end of each week, you're going to add up your total minutes of exercise, your minutes of cardio, your miles, and your total elevation gain. And this should give you a good idea of where to start your training. So if that just sounded like a lot to remember, definitely check the workbook and definitely check that Excel template that it links to. That'll, even if you're doing it by paper or on your own, it'll give you, it'll list everything for you to track. So Miss Becky logs her workouts for 2 weeks, and she figures out she's doing about 4 to 5 hours of exercise a week. And in fact, all of it is cardio, because Becky doesn't lift ever, at least not yet. So Becky decides to start her training at 5 hours a week and build from there. So that's probably a really good decision. The only exception might be if most of Becky's 5 hours involves strength training, she might want to, because hiking is such an endurance sport that requires good cardiovascular fitness, she might want to back up a little bit or hold it steady while she's working on building up her cardio. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. All right, so number 3, we're going to build a bridge to where you want to go. So now that we know where you are and where you want to go, we got to find a way to get there. And this is the part where we map out all the major phases of your training season so you can make sure that you don't miss a step. And as you work through the next couple of steps, and you're going to work through them later on your own with your workbook, it really helps to have a calendar in front of you. Some people can do this on their phones. I personally actually like to print out a few months of calendar pages to see and put them on the wall. If you want to do that, check out the website printacalendar.com. There's a link in your workbook. It's totally fast and free to make calendars. So once you've got your calendar in front of you, your first step is to schedule your goal hike. And you may not know the exact date already, but if not, you just take your best guess. You can always adjust later. And from there, we're going to work backwards. So next, you're going to schedule what's called your taper. And this is a rest period just before your goal climb, where you're going to decrease your weekly training time by 50 to 70%. So for most people, a 2-week taper works really well. If your goal trip is relatively easy, or if your training time is a bit short and you want to max it out, you could also try a 1-week taper. And there are people who do 3 to 4 weeks if they have a very challenging training season and trip plan. But I'd say for most trips, 2 weeks works great. And then next, you want to make sure that you have enough time to train. One of the most common mistakes that inexperienced endurance athletes make is starting their training too late. So go ahead and count the weeks between now and your taper. And a good rule of thumb is that someone who is active already, but not actively training, they exercise, but they're not like training for anything in particular, that person's probably going to need about 4 months to train for a big endurance goal, like a long distance hike, the Colorado Trail, the Chilkoot Pass, the Chilkoot Trail, Mount Rainier. And you may need longer if you are not already exercising regularly, or if you need extra recovery time due to age, a chronic condition, or if your goal trip is just very challenging. So Gary says, I'm 57, I got to train all the time. Got to use it or lose it, right? Yes, good for you, Gary. That is awesome. Yeah, so Gary, in Gary's case, if he's, depending on what level he's starting at, might not need 4 months. I think 4 months is always good to budget, because you just never know what's going to happen, what's going to come up. So another thing I want you to do during this bridge building process is to decide on the best length for your training cycles. One endurance training mistake beginners often make is that they just keep increasing their training time, mileage, or elevation gain week over week until the taper. And when they do this, they're ignoring an important principle that's called the training effect. And what that states is that after hard exercise, your body gets weaker and then it gets stronger at rest. So after a couple weeks of building up, it's really important to take an easy week, and this will allow your body to consolidate all the gains you've made. So most people do really well on a 4-week training cycle, which means you build up for 3 weeks and rest and go easy for 1 week. And this is actually where I suggest you start. Some exceptions to that rule: if you're older, if you have a chronic health condition, or if you just need more recovery time for any reason, you can use a 3 or even 2-week cycle. It's also totally fine to adjust the length of your training cycle across the season. That's actually pretty normal. A lot of people will start out at 4 weeks, and they'll start to get kind of tired as the workouts get harder. And in that case, it's totally fine to go down to a 3-week cycle or even a 2-week cycle. And at this point, you don't have to put the cycles on the calendar. I just want you to pick a cycle length to start with, and you're going to write it down in your workbook. You'll see a page for the step where you can write down all these numbers. What did I do? Hang on one sec, guys. Messing up my phone. Okay, so other important dates to note. One advantage of calendaring your training season is that it allows you to anticipate and plan for any bumps in the road. So take a minute, think about what's happening in your life during this training season. Do you have personal, family, or work commitments already scheduled? Go ahead and add those to your calendar now. And then think about how you will work around these. One of the easiest ways, by the way, to work around a busy week or travel during the training season is just to make that week an easy week, no matter where it falls in your training cycle. So this might mean adjusting the cycle length so that you take a rest week before you would normally take one, or even after. So if your family reunion in another state falls on the 3rd week of your 4-week training cycle, just make that a 3-week cycle. It's no big deal. Doing it once in a while won't hurt you, and it might actually help you if you are a little overtrained. 30 minutes. Thank you, Cindy. So how fast can you ramp up your training? A good rule of thumb is to increase your training hours by 5 to 10% a week. You can start with a slower ramp up. On the slower end of that, if you are new to training, are older, chronic conditions that require extra recovery time. If you're experienced in endurance training and already quite fit, Mr. Gary, you can try ramping up faster on the fast end of that. But, slow down if at any point you feel overtrained or very fatigued for more than a few days. So one caveat: if you significantly increase the intensity of your exercise, hold your weekly hours, your time steady. So for example, if you're currently training for 7 hours a week and you decide to add a second speed workout, stay at 7 hours for another week just to give your body a time to adjust to the higher intensity. So Becky, she's gone through all these exercises just like you're going to do in the workbook, and let's look at her results. So Becky scheduled her goal hike and she built in her 2-week taper, and she realizes she has 16 weeks or about 4 months to train for her trek. As I mentioned, that's actually a good time frame for someone who's already working out some and otherwise healthy. Becky decides to try the 4-week training cycle, knowing she can always adjust the length of the cycle later. She decides to go for a 7% build in training volume per week. That's moderately aggressive, and it's probably a good place to start based on her health and her experience. So she can always slow it down if she needs to. Becky could take this. Now, here's something you shouldn't do. Becky could take that 7% right now and extrapolate how long she will be hiking and how high she will be climbing at the end of 16 weeks. She could just do all the math and put it on the calendar. But I honestly don't recommend you do this. And that's because training rarely follows a linear path. You will get sick. You will have to take a week off at some point. You will get sent somewhere on a business trip. 3 feet of snow will fall and keep you from doing your long hike, which we'll talk about. And you just don't know what's going to happen. So a better strategy that I'll talk more about in a little bit is to plan your training kind of one cycle at a time, and that allows you to make adjustments as needed. Oh, so what are good yoga moves for hiking and links to find them? Dwayne, great question. Guys, I should have mentioned this at the beginning. We're going to have a question and answer section at the end. So Cindy might answer some of your questions as we're going along. I might answer some of them, but so that yoga, I'm going to have to think a little bit about. So I'm going to save this one to the Q&A at the end. So I hope that's okay, Dwayne. That's a great question. We could talk a little bit about yoga and hiking. So let's go to the next section. Oh, thank you. Okay, so now that you know let me reset my tongue for a second here. So now that you know where you're at, where you're going, and you have a basic roadmap for how to get there, let's look at some specific workouts that will help you reach your goals. Again, please don't stress about remembering everything or writing it down. All this info is in your workbook. Just relax, sip your wine, sip your tea, and let's go. Man, I really need a picture for this slide, but it is step number 4. We're going to plan your aerobic-based training. What is that? This is it. To train for mountain hiking, the most important thing you can do is to build up what's called your aerobic base. And we can define aerobic base a few ways, but for our purposes, let's say it's the number of hours of moderate intensity cardio, which on our 1 to 10 scale is RPE 4 or 5, that you do every week. So why is this so important? Well, on a long hike or climb, you will be moving at a moderate pace for many hours. Many of you have already done it many times. So to make that happen, you really have to train like a marathon runner, not a sprinter. During endurance workouts, you are mostly relying on your aerobic system for fuel. The aerobic system is the metabolic system in your body that converts fat into energy. And to train the aerobic system, you have to do a lot of exercise at moderate intensity. And unfortunately, that kind of training takes a lot of time. So that's why I recommend planning at least 4 months of training to get ready for your goal climb. And so how do you plan for your aerobic-based training? Let's look at some guidelines. Let's see. Megan, is that Megan Trainor? Oh, because she's all about the bass. That's a song. I'm almost too old to know that. Okay, so first, your aerobic-based workouts should be performed, like I said, at RPE 4 to 5 on a 10-point scale. And when you're exercising at this intensity, kind of a good way to check it is you should be able to chat with a friend without too much trouble. You know, you might be a little gaspy, but you're basically able to talk to them. You don't feel like you want to stop talking. Do slow down if talking becomes difficult, or if you notice yourself panting or gasping. between words. Your base workouts should also make up about 75% of your weekly training time. So if you are doing 5 hours of training a week, about 3.75 hours of those would be aerobic based training. Math, decimals. I wish I probably should have found one that doesn't have decimals, but there you go. About 3/4 of your time should be aerobic based training, moderate intensity cardio. And there are two kinds of aerobic based workouts I really want you to focus on. So first and foremost, your big priority for every week is your long hike. This workout should take up about 40% of your total weekly training time. So that can be a lot of time. So again, if you're doing 5 hours of training per week, your long hike will last about 2 hours, and it'll get longer as your training time gets longer. So if your long hike takes 2 hours, that's going to leave you with about 1.75 hours of base training left to do. 75% is 3.75 minus 2 is 1.75. This is all in the workbook, and it's a lot easier to follow than me saying it. So we're going to break this down we're going to break that remaining time down into shorter workouts lasting 30 to 60 minutes. So for example, you might decide to take a 60-minute hike one day after work and then jog for 45 minutes another day. Does all that math look confusing? Let's actually get back to work building a plan for Becky. This will shed some light on it. So Becky, from our example, is starting her training at about 5 hours a week. And we know that 75% of her training should be spent doing aerobic-based training. So that comes out to about 3.75 hours, like we said. We also know she should be doing one long sport-specific workout per week that takes up about 40% of her total training time. So in her case, she decides to do a 2-hour hike, and that leaves her with 1.75 hours of aerobic-based training still to do. Becky, let's say she really hates to run. So she decides she's going to do another 1-hour hike one day after work, and then 45 minutes on the stair mill on another day. And she might change it up week by week, but yeah, something like that. So what should aerobic-based workouts look like? For the long hike, keep it very sport-specific. Hikers and trekkers should hike and trek. Backpackers and mountaineers should wear a backpack. And you should gradually increase your pack weight each week until you're carrying about the same weight that you're going to carry on your goal hike. For the shorter base building workouts, any sustained exercise that raises your heart rate is fine. So some examples: hiking, running on hills, climbing stairs, the stair mill, the incline treadmill, snowshoeing and cross-country skiing in the winter. And then once a week, you can also cross-train during one of your shorter workouts. So what that looks like, if you are tired to death of stairs and hill repeats, just try riding your bike or taking an aerobics class for one or two of your base workouts, and that'll give your joints a break, and then also add some variety to your program. So putting many hours a week into aerobic-based training can be tough, but it really is, all the research shows, hands down, the best way to build endurance for really big hikes. So Peter is one of my blog readers who did a lot of base training and long-distance hiking to get ready for Orizaba, which is a high-altitude volcano hike in Mexico that goes up to 18,400 feet. And he also added some heavy pack training, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But this training took a significant amount of time and work. But Peter said, Sarah really helped a ton with my summit climb on Orizaba. Her aerobic workouts and heavy pack training were especially useful. I could in real time feel the positive effects of many long hikes that had built up endurance and stamina. I'm no speed demon and pretty average at this stuff, but building up little by little, following the training plan was ultimately a core part of reaching the top. So there you have it, from someone that climbed up to 18,400 feet. And then, so let's go on to number 5, which is planning your speed work. So now this is the part where the wrap breaks down. There are 2 really good reasons to add some speed workouts to your training. First, speed workouts create resistance that stimulates elevation gain. So this makes them especially important for those of you who are training for mountain hiking in the flatlands, Nebraska and such. They are one of the key ways you can train for elevation gain without actually having to climb the mountain. High intensity speed workouts can also improve your performance and comfort at altitude. Now, as I say that, please remember that this speed training is no substitute for taking time to acclimatize, hiking slowly on your first few days at high altitude. But, all that being said, research does suggest that high intensity training can help your body transport and use more oxygen, which is a big advantage at high elevations. So why not give it a try? And if you haven't done speed work before, I realize it can feel a little scary or intimidating, but I promise you, these will be some of your favorite workouts. And they can also be really short, which is another reason to love them. So let's look at some of the rules for your speed workouts as you're designing these workouts. When you're training for long distance hiking, mountaineering, backpacking, I recommend doing 1 to 2 speed workouts per week. These will be interval workouts. So what that looks like, you'll warm up for 10 minutes with 10 minutes of easy to moderate cardio. It's very important. Do not skip. And then what you're going to do, just pick up the pace for a short time. Hold it for a couple minutes, however long you plan to, then stop, let yourself recover, and then repeat. So you just keep running fast, slow, fast, slow. I say running, but you could be doing this with hiking. We'll talk about the exercises in a minute. You could be doing this with any cardio. It does not need to be running. The intensity of your intervals depends on your fitness and your goal levels. So if you're a beginner, you start at maybe RPE 5 for the fast part of your interval, and you work up gradually. And to help you plan your beginner interval workouts, I'm actually going to include my Intro to Intervals ebook in your party pack at the end of the webinar. So it includes tables that show you how many intervals to do, how long they should last, and how long to rest in between. So be sure to stick around to the end and grab that awesome resource. There's also some additional info in your workbook as well. And note that the super high intensity intervals at RPE 8 and 9 can be really awesome, especially if you're going to altitude. These are helpful, but they also increase your risk of injury and cardiovascular stress. So the absolute risk is still quite small, but don't start those and don't go that hard until you have a good base of fitness. A good rule of thumb is to start them once you're doing about 7 hours of cardio a week. And let's see, oh, nope. Okay, and then the best exercises for interval workouts require you to generate power fast with your whole body. So things like running, hiking uphill, especially with a pack, aerobics, jumping, burpees, squat throws, mountain climbers, CrossFit, weightlifting circuits. They're all great. Because you're trying to generate power fast, it's kind of hard to do short, fast intervals on workout machines like a treadmill, although they can sometimes work in a pinch. So Miss Becky from our example, she's active, but she hasn't really done speed workouts in the past. So we're going to start her on, let's say, a 30-minute interval workout. She'll begin with 8 to 10 minutes of easy cardio to warm up. Then she'll do 3 5-minute intervals. She's going to do them at RPE 6 and 7. And then between intervals, she'll slow down for about 2 minutes and allow her heart rate and breathing to recover. Those of you who are doing them for the very first time might need more time to recover. That's totally fine. And then since Becky doesn't run, she's going to do her intervals on the Stairmaster. And although machines aren't ideal for the really short, intense intervals, they're usually okay for longer intervals like this. And then once Becky builds up to 7 hours of cardio a week, she really wants to add a super high intensity interval workout to her schedule to help her prepare for the high altitude in Peru. But for now, she's going to stick with these longer, medium intensity intervals, and she's going to get lots of benefits. All right, which brings us to step 6. Let me check we're doing okay with time here. So although strength training, so this is where we plan our strength workouts. Some of you are very excited, probably. Some of you are kind of like, and let's talk about that. So although strength training isn't the most important part of endurance training, it's very important for your overall health and wellness. So just look at Serena Williams here. She's 37, and I think she could kick all of our asses at once. So strength training is awesome because it aids with weight loss and management. It helps prevent cardiovascular disease, helps you maintain bone density, and improve your mood. So even if you don't want to be highly ripped like Serena, I do recommend that you do some strength work at least 1 to 2 days per week. And a good rule of thumb, if you're doing 2 workouts a week, give yourself at least 48 hours to recover in between them. And then some other rules for strength work. So most hikers do really well on what's called high rep, low resistance strength training. This really works on your muscular endurance so that your muscles can contract over and over and over without fatiguing. And like a typical workout for high rep, low resistance, hang on one second. Yeah, a typical workout for high rep, low resistance. First, you're going to start with 10 minutes of either light lifting or cardio to warm up your muscles. Don't put a lot of resistance on your muscles, please, unless they actually feel warm. Like a good rule of thumb my coach makes me do is I'm not allowed to lift until I break a sweat. So that works really well. And once you're nice and warmed up, you're going to do 2 to 3 long sets with light resistance. You can use your body weight, dumbbells, or resistance bands. Try to hit all your major muscle groups, but focus on your lower body and core if you're short on time. To help you plan this part of your training so that I don't necessarily have to talk you all through it right now, there are some exercises and sample programs in your workbook. And then I'm also giving everyone who stays till the end of the webinar a copy of my at-home strength workouts ebook. And that'll show you what exercises to do, how many times to do them. So be sure to stick around and grab that awesome resource. Another great strength workout that is great for you hikers, backpackers, and mountaineers. Just take just put lots of weight in your backpack, go out to some hilly terrain and hike. And this could be a great option if you don't have access to a gym, or if you just need a change of scene. If you're like, get me out of the gym, go do the heavy backpack hike. And now I did say that high rep, low resistance works great for most hikers, but I know in this group we have some backpackers, some mountaineers. So for those of you that are going to be carrying a lot of heavy weight, you're actually going to want to do some heavy lifting as well. The way a lot of people work this is early in the training season before they have a lot of cardio in their program while their aerobic base is still building up. They do 4 to 6 weeks of lifting heavy. And you can read more about heavy lifting in your workbook. I put a sample program in there with the reps and the sets for you. And what that's going to do is just recruit more of your muscle fibers so that when you move on to the endurance part of strength training, the high rep, low resistance, you'll be using more of your muscle cells, your muscle fibers, which is definitely going to be important for you if you're carrying lots of weights. So building Becky's training plan. Becky, she has about 0.75 hours or 45 minutes left for strength in her plan. Looking ahead at her schedule, Becky has a busy week coming up. So she decides that she'll do one 45-minute heavy backpack hike to target her core and lower body. She puts 20 pounds of water bottles in her pack and heads for a hilly trail near her house for this workout. Walking uphill with a weighted pack works her glutes and calves, and then walking downhill actually strengthens her quads. So as long as you don't have any knee issues, keep the water in when you're coming downhill. So this is a great sport-specific workout to prepare her for her trek. And over the next few weeks, she gradually increases her pack weight. She never exceeds 30% of her body weight in her pack, which is a good rule of thumb, but she gets it up close to what she's going to carry on her trek. And then during the weeks when she will travel for work, Becky's going to do a shorter resistance band workout in her hotel room. She'll also include some body weight squats and lunges to target her lower body. And this is probably a good place to point out for those of you who are really awesome at math that Becky's plan doesn't add up to exactly 5 hours, and that's okay. The 5 hours is a target to shoot for while you're planning. It doesn't have to be exactly 5 hours for you perfectionists out there. So some quick bonus tips for Becky now that we've gone through all 6 steps. She's got her first week of training mapped out, but where does she go from here? So first, like I said, don't make the mistakes some people make and plan all your training from now until the goal hike. And why is that? Because while we can do the math, the training will never go exactly as planned. Expect that the weather will suck, your cat will get diarrhea, you will get sick, and other setbacks will occur. Guys, setbacks are normal. When they come, just say, this is what's supposed to happen. So planning one cycle at a time for yourself means you don't get too far ahead, and it also makes it much easier to adjust your training plan as you go along. And then next, keep logging and grading your workouts. So if you're getting lots of B's and C's, if you're giving yourself lots of B's and C's, the workouts feel pretty good and not overly tiring, you are probably in the right rhythm. If you're getting more than a few D's or F's in a row, it's probably time to adjust your training plan. Maybe you need shorter cycles, or maybe you need to decrease your weekly ramp up. Maybe you need to repeat a week. Just take a look and see what makes sense for you. And finally, when you're working toward a big goal hike, it is so important to have plan B in mind. So what will you do if it snows 3 feet on your long hike day? Or if you get stuck in traffic and you can't make it to the gym, having a few go-to workouts that you can do at home or in town can be a lifesaver in those situations. And they might not be as exactly effective as what you had planned, but they are way better than doing nothing. So we have covered, I don't know about you, but it feels like, I'm tired. It feels like we have covered a ton of hiking fitness tips and tricks in the past 45 minutes. I know you must have questions. So in just a minute, we're going to start the Q&A section of the program. Go ahead and pop your questions into the chat box, just like Dwayne did. And I'm going to do my best to answer all of them. And if there's some that maybe I don't know the answer off the top of my head, I will definitely get back to you, but we'll talk about as many of them as we can. And while you're sending me all your juicy questions in the chat box, let's summarize what we've learned today. So we talked about how following someone else's training plan that you find on the internet or in the book, it can totally wreck you. It's much more effective to write your own, which is why we are here. And if you take one thing away, I want you to know that you can train to climb your mountain. You can train to get in shape for mountain hiking, and you can be a great coach to yourself. I mean, if I learned how to do it, I know that you can. Spelling mistake. I am not a perfectionist, people. Can you see? So my 6-step training plan process, it's not just a bunch of theory. This is something I've tested on myself and also it's worked very well for my clients and students. I've developed this simple but powerful training plan formula that makes it easy to get in, not easy, but simplifies the process of getting in shape for big hikes and climbs. And that's what I've outlined for you today. So the big question is, how can you apply this training plan formula to your own hiking training? Because we talked about, we don't want to be like No Plan Becky who is winging it. We want to be the training ninjas and we can be that for the rest of our lives. So what you could do is you can take what you've learned today, take your workbook, work through the exercises, and I really hope you use this process to start planning for some of your trips that are coming up later in the year. And I think I've given you enough info. You should be able to, a lot of you, this will be enough for you to be able to do that very well. We always have a couple of people who want to take things deeper, who have these huge goals set for themselves and who really want to coach themselves to the finish. So for those of you who want to go deeper, I'm going to quickly share one of my programs with you. So as a thank you for attending today, I'm going to open a special limited time offer on my Mountain Fit course. Mountain Fit's an online self-coaching program that teaches you how to train yourself for hiking, backpacking, and mountaineering adventures. It shows you step-by-step how to prepare for your goal hike. And it actually works even if you are starting from zero. So before we start Q&A, I'll give you a quick backstage pass to the Mountain Fits. Whoop. There we go. So the ultimate goal of Mountain Fit's to make you an endurance training expert so you can get the most out of every workout and spend less time training while still getting great results. So first in the course, you get a series of lessons that really dive deep into what I call the 5 essential workouts. We're going to break down each of these 5 essential workouts and show you exactly what to do to build strength, speed, and endurance fast. And you'll also learn how to adapt these workouts to your fitness level. So whether you're a brand new beginner or more advanced, you'll know exactly where to start and what to do next to move forward towards your goal. And then we really get down to business with 4 months of training plans. And because you've attended this workshop, you now know that a training plan is a roadmap. It is not a prescription to follow into the grave. But there are also some advantages to having a progression of workouts laid out for you. So the Mountain Fit training plans start from zero fitness and they build all the way up to the epic endurance level. So whether you're starting out or you're looking to harden up for a big climb, you can use these templates to design your own training plan. And it'll save you a lot of math. So knowing how to train and having a plan can really make a difference, especially if you struggle with consistency and motivation. My client Janice says, "Thank you for your plans, support, and advice. You have changed my life. And I'm not just talking about being Lifetime TV dramatic. I was too overwhelmed to even begin. And Sarah got me moving and setting goals." And finally, in Mountain Fit, you'll get plenty of tips and tools for your goal hike itself, including a pre-hike trip checklist. And we'll also put some lessons in on pacing and biohacking. So these lessons are designed to give you a performance edge on your goal hike while feeling less tired and enjoying yourself more. And so when you jump in Mountain Fit right now, you get a 14-week training plan over 30 lessons. It's about to be even more lessons. I'm actually writing some new ones based on some feedback from the first few people to go through it. We have a free private Facebook group where you can ask all your questions and get some support. And when you're training, So when you're training for 3 months, it is normal to go through some setbacks and challenges. So I want you to have a place where you can troubleshoot your training schedule if you get stuck and also share your goals and wins. So that's why I hold weekly group coaching sessions via Zoom. You can tune in to meet me and my guest coaches face to face and get answers to your questions. And because getting started is the hardest part, you also get a 40-minute one-to-one startup call with me so we can talk about where you're at, how you like to work out, and plan your first few weeks of training. So, hang on one sec, guys. Yeah, so I'm not sure if I covered this, but when you sign up for all this, which is valued at over $600, you get access to everything for life, and you get access for life. So if you can take as long as you need to train. If you're injured right now, you can start when you're healed. If your goal hike is a long ways off, just start when you're ready. But don't miss out on this special offer because the price will never be lower. What is the price, you might ask? So you can get started right now for just one payment of $197 or 3 monthly payments of $75. You can see probably on your screen there is a box you can click that'll take you straight to, it looks like a few of you already clicked it. Yeah, go-getters. That's awesome. Yeah, so you can go straight to the sales page and enroll. And you can also, what was I going to say? Yeah, that's probably the easiest way. Just go ahead and click the box. It does come with a 30-day satisfaction guarantee. I try to keep this very generous. So if you're not sure, feel free to take a look, take a look, take a test drive. And then if you are feeling like it's not for you for any reason, just email me within 30 days and you can get a refund, no questions asked. I'm very good about that. So friends, it is your time. Are you ready to finally climb your mountain, hike your hike, or trek your trek? Then I'm inviting you to jump in Mountain Fit self-coaching for mountain athletes. And the doors to this program are open for the next 72 hours. So it is time to jump in with both feet if you feel like this is something that would help you. And I think this brings us to the Q&A. So while you're checking out Mountain Fit, I'm going to take a few minutes. Where are we? Oh, we're right at 6:30. Oh, this is the best. I usually am so long-winded. These things go on for like an hour and a half. So Oh my gosh. So well, Cindy just asked me a question. Sorry, guys. Let me think. Yeah, hang on for just a minute. Okay. We'll do goodie bag at the very end. Okay. Yeah, I'll give you the signal. Okay, cool. It's great. It's so great to have Cindy here. She helps me so much. I hope you've enjoyed chatting with her. She is my wing woman. It's her internship. She's my intern. What is your base right now? Just to get an idea. Okay, so we had a question. So we had a question about yoga. And I'm going to give you, it looks like Cindy had an answer. We had a question about my base, and I can definitely talk to you about that. Oh my gosh, it's kind of a funny question. Let's start with those two. We're going to go until about, let's say about 6:40 for the people who are watching from work and whatnot, and then we're going to wrap it up. So if you have any other questions, go ahead and jump in. So let's start with yoga. Cindy, do you know a lot about yoga? Because she's a physical therapist. Okay. I am not a yoga expert, Dwayne, but I will say that I've been doing more yoga, and I definitely have clients that do a lot of yoga, and it's amazing. Yoga has so many benefits. Like, it's going to help you just improve your range of motion, prevent injury, move more effectively, and it's so relaxing. Like, it's a wonderful way to do your active recovery. Cindy, do you want to say something? Do you want to come on camera, Cindy? You can.
So with your training hours, would yoga be like outside of those hours?
To some degree it would. And that is something I always like to talk about when people ask about yoga. So yoga in general, unless you have a pretty vigorous yoga program, and it's pretty rare to have one that vigorous, you definitely are probably not pushing your heart rate to RPE 4 or 5. So it's not really part of your aerobic based training. So when you're doing yoga, do as much as you like. It's not generally going to tire you out or hurt you, but also don't let it get in the way of other priorities. Like, don't skip your long hike to go to yoga class is what I always tell people. As far as resources, Dwayne, I honestly, oh my gosh, Patty says there is a book called Yoga for Hikers. Patty, do you have this book? And if you have any more info, let us know the author. That sounds amazing. So Patty, and then Cindy also, you said Vinyasa yoga fit into the training plan. Okay. So you also had a yoga question?
The Vinyasa yoga, you are going through a lot of poses. Mm-hmm. And when you are going up and down, it's more rigorous yoga. And if you, I just find if I'm doing like an isometric contraction, and then, like my practice of vinyasa, it's a 90-minute practice. So it does a lot of, standing to down, and then the last half hour is all stretching on the floor.
Okay.
So I mean, that's kind of like, that's an intense day. I don't think I could do that. And 15-mile hike that day, but maybe that could be 90 minutes one day that I wasn't doing something else.
Okay, so did you guys hear her question? I'll just summarize. She does vinyasa for 90 minutes. She feels like it's pretty rigorous. She does she says it definitely has a strength component to it. When she says isometric, that's like a contraction that you hold with your muscles. Like if you've ever done a plank, that's an isometric exercise. So that's a good question, Cindy. And I think there's no hard or fast rule. I would personally, if you love yoga, do as much as feels comfortable, but just keeping in mind that your number one priority during training season is your aerobic base, and in particular, your long hike. So if it's going to interfere with that, then maybe that's a day not to go to yoga class, but in general, yoga is great. Another thing that that I sometimes write into my clients' plans, if they enjoy yoga and they're very new to strength training and feeling intimidated by it, it definitely has a strength component. So it's a great place to start if the thought of doing strength training feels overwhelming, or if you have some injuries that make doing strength training, like classic strength training with like dumbbells and barbells, like if that just seems like it's not for you, starting with yoga is a great place, and you will get stronger from doing it for sure. So let's see. And Dwayne, I don't have a website. Oh, what'd you say? Yoga for Hikers. Oh, so Cindy put the name of the book up, Dwayne, which is wonderful. Okay. So Dwayne, I hope that's enough to go on. I wish I was more of a yoga expert. I have a friend that's a teacher that I'm hoping to do more things with. So definitely check the blog, maybe we'll do one of these webinars. That would be so fun. Oh, and Cindy put the link up because she's amazing. Okay, so I saw another question here. Jillian says, how does weekend activity fit in? I ski downhill 6 hours on Saturday, do backcountry 6 hours on Sunday almost every week, but I'm way less active during the week. So does this count for aerobic base? So Jillian, definitely. Your downhill skiing is probably going to depend a bit on how aggressively you're skiing. So just kind of check your cardio, be like, am I sustaining RPE 4 or 5? Sometimes it's helpful to wear like a heart rate monitor for a day and just kind of see how you go. My guess is that the downhill probably has some base in it, but I wouldn't necessarily count it as a base workout unless you're going really, really hard. But the backcountry for sure, that is definitely like you can use that as an aerobic based workout. And it's actually cross country skiing is actually or ski touring is pretty sport specific to hiking and backpacking. So definitely do plenty of that. And you're doing, and really what you can, the way you said you don't do a whole lot during the week, but you get a whole lot in on the weekend, which is great. I would just keep track of your hours and just make sure you're increasing week over week. And there's probably going to come a point where you're like, I can't ski like 20 hours a week. Like this is just getting crazy. What can I do during the week to give myself a little bit more base training? So maybe you find a way to sneak another workout in. And there's a lot of great things you can do that are just kind of close to home, whether that's jogging, walking up flights of stairs. If you do have a gym and you can hop on the elliptical or the stair mill, that's really great. So does that answer your question, Jillian? I hope that helps. That's a great question. It just came up. Liz, I said I would tell you my base. So I'll tell you what's happening for me right now. I'm actually working with a coach, which is kind of funny because I am running an ultra race. So it's been a big learning experience. So my base is very low right now. I'm actually coming off an injury, and my ultra race, which is 50 miles, isn't until September. So right now my base is probably, how many hours of cardio did I do this week? I'm probably at about maybe no more than 8-10 hours a week. So it's really funny because I've never run an ultra, and I know I'm going to have to make this enormous base to do that. And I'm definitely very far from being there, but it's just kind of like having faith, right? You just build up a little every week. Whenever I have done big climbs, like when I went to Bolivia, when I did Mount Rainier, I was probably closer to 12 to 15. I live in Colorado, so it's easy for me to have a big base. I can go out and hike all the time, hike both days of the weekend. But I've seen people do really amazing things backpacking at a much smaller base. So even if you can get up, they say for classic endurance training, 10 hours a week is good to shoot for. I've seen people do amazing things on much less than that. So really what I kind of tell my clients is not to necessarily have a benchmark in mind and torture yourself with it. Be like, oh my gosh, I got to hike 20 miles before I go on my Colorado trail hike. You just kind of see where you're at, listen to your body, and just week by week, take it as far as you can get it. That is the way I train myself. That's the way I train my clients. I really think that's a great way to look at base. Oh, super, super, super. Would downhill count for strength? Yes, I think it would, Jillian. I would definitely count it as a muscular endurance workout because you're contracting over and over. So yes, and yes, the aerobic base question regarding backcountry. Yes. So yeah, I would almost count that like a heavy backpacking hike, especially if you are feeling it. If you're feeling fatigued afterward, you are definitely training your legs on the way down. So yeah, it's kind of like the muscular endurance version of the heavy backpack hike. So yeah, the aggressive downhill skiing. So I am actually going to wrap up here. I think we're at 6:40. You know what, Cindy? I want to leave the Mountain Fit thingy up in case people want to click. So I'm just going to type the link to grab to download your gift pack. I'm just going to put that right in the chat. So Let me see what it is. I think it's HTTPS Misadventure. Oh, you got it. Oh, Cindy, you got it. Oh my gosh, she's the best, man. My little intern is amazing. I joke and call her my intern, but she's amazing. She knows more than I do about this thing by now. Yeah, so go ahead and grab your gifts before you go. What I'll do, we're gonna actually shut off the camera and I don't have my camera on. We're gonna shut off the sound, but I will leave this screen up for a few minutes. If you wanna check out Mountain Fit, definitely give it a click, read all about it. Hope to see some of you in there. You'll also, if you don't wanna decide right tonight, get some emails about it over the next few days. But guys, you've been amazing. And I've just enjoyed talking to you and hearing your great questions. And what a great group. You guys were a lot of fun. So thank you for tuning in tonight. I hope you get a ton of value. You can definitely always chat with me at my website, on the Facebook group if you're in there. And if you have additional questions, and let's definitely just keep in touch. And yeah, happy training. Have a good one, guys. Have a wonderful night. All right.